First contact and unexpected invitation. The day Earth made first contact with alien life wasn't marked by explosions or invasion, but by a simple transmission that lit up radio telescopes around the globe. As governments scrambled and the public speculated wildly, a select few found themselves thrust into the spotlight as humanity's first ambassadors to the stars. Among them was Lieutenant Sarah Chen, a decorated combat pilot with a penchant for pushing boundaries. She stood ramrod straight in the United Nations Assembly Hall, her dark eyes scanning the holographic projections of various alien dignitaries. The Galactic Federation, they called themselves, a coalition of spacefaring races spanning thousands of light years. Humans, the translator conveyed the words of Zaxxillion, a towering insectoid being whose mandibles clicked rhythmically. We have observed your species from afar, fascinated by your rapid advancement, despite the harsh conditions of your homeworld. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Harsh conditions. Earth had always seemed rather hospitable to its inhabitants. It is with great interest, Zaxxillion continued, that we extend an invitation to your species. The Intergalactic Academy of Combat seeks representatives from Earth to join its ranks. The room erupted in a cacophony of voices. And Combat Academy? Was this a trap, a test, or a genuine offer of cultural exchange? As the debates raged on, Sarah found herself volunteering. Her superiors were hesitant. Sending a skilled military asset into unknown territory seemed risky, but her record spoke for itself, and her adaptability in high-stress situations made her an ideal candidate. Weeks later, Sarah stood aboard a sleek alien vessel, watching Earth shrink to a pale blue dot in the distance. The ship's interior was a marvel of biotechnology, with pulsing organic walls and gravity that seemed to shift subtly with each turn. Fascinating, isn't it? A voice chirped beside her. Sarah turned to see a small, avian-like creature with iridescent feathers. I'm Cretal, your liaison for the journey. I must say, we're all quite excited to have a human joining us this cycle. Sarah smiled, extending a hand before realizing the gesture might not translate. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, pleased to meet you, Cretal. I have to admit, I'm still wrapping my head around all this. Cretal's head tilted curiously. Oh, but surely you've encountered more advanced civilizations in your explorations. Actually, Sarah chuckled, you're the first extraterrestrial life we've ever contacted. The alien's eyes widened, multifaceted surfaces reflecting the starlight. Truly. But how did you manage interstellar communication without? Never mind. This explains the Council's interest. A nascent spacefaring race from a death world, invited to the Academy. Unprecedented. Death world. Sarah's brow furrowed. What do you mean by that? Cretal launched into an explanation of planetary classifications, describing how Earth's gravity, atmospheric composition, and biodiversity placed it in a category reserved for the most inhospitable worlds. Most sentient life evolves on much more stable, predictable planets. They concluded, your adaptability must be remarkable. As the journey continued, Sarah found herself bombarded with questions about human physiology, culture, and history. She did her best to answer, all while marveling at the diversity of life forms aboard the ship. There were beings of crystal and light, amorphous blobs that communicated through color changes, and towering creatures that seemed to phase in and out of reality. Finally, after what felt like weeks of travel, though Cretal assured her it had only been days, thanks to some incomprehensible faster-than-light technology, they arrived at their destination. The Intergalactic Academy of Combat sprawled across an entire moon, its surface a patchwork of diverse biomes and artificial structures. As their shuttle descended towards the primary docking bay, Sarah's trained eye picked out defense systems, training grounds, and what looked like environmental simulation domes. It was impressive, to say the least, but also somewhat intimidating. What exactly had she signed up for? The docking bay was a hive of activity, with beings of all shapes and sizes hurrying about their business. As Sarah stepped off the shuttle, she felt the subtle difference in gravity. slightly lighter than Earth normal, but not by much. She took a deep breath, noting the slightly sweet taste to the recycled air. Lieutenant Chen, a booming voice echoed across the bay. Sarah turned to see a massive reptilian being approaching. Its scales shimmered with an oily iridescence, and its 4 eyes blinked in unsettling asynchronicity. "I am Drav Kun, Commandant of the Academy. Welcome to your new home for the foreseeable future." Sarah snapped to attention, offering a crisp salute. "Thank you, Commandant. I'm honored to be here." Drav Kun's lipless mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "At ease, Lieutenant. Your Earth military protocols won't be necessary here. We have our own ways." He gestured with a clawed hand. "Come, let me show you to your quarters, and then we'll begin your orientation." As they walked, Sarah couldn't help but notice the stares and whispers that followed them. Some seemed curious, others wary, and a few downright hostile. She squared her shoulders, reminding herself that she represented not just her nation, but her entire species. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them head-on. Her quarters turned out to be a Spartanly furnished room with adaptive surfaces that could reconfigure to suit various physiologies. Sarah was grateful to find that the bed could adjust to approximate an Earth-standard mattress. As she unpacked her meager belongings, a chime sounded, followed by Drav Kun's voice. "Lieutenant Chen, please report to Training Arena 7 for your initial assessment. We need to establish a baseline for your capabilities." Sarah acknowledged the order and made her way through the winding corridors, following the helpful holographic indicators. She arrived at a vast, circular chamber with a variety of obstacle courses and exercise equipment, much of which she couldn't even begin to fathom the purpose of. A group of alien instructors awaited her, each holding what appeared to be data tablets. Sarah recognized a few species from her journey, but others were completely foreign to her. Right then, one of the instructors, a being that seemed to be composed entirely of shimmering plasma, spoke. "Let's start with some basic physical tests. Nothing too strenuous, just to get a feel for human capabilities." What followed was a series of exercises that ranged from familiar, running, jumping, lifting weights, to utterly bizarre, navigating a zero-gravity maze, identifying subsonic frequencies, and manipulating force fields with her mind. Throughout it all, Sarah did her best to take everything in stride, even when she failed spectacularly at some of the more alien tasks. To her surprise, the instructors seemed more and more excited as the tests progressed. They whispered among themselves, gesticulating with various appendages. "Is everything all right?" Sarah asked, wiping sweat from her brow after completing a particularly grueling obstacle course. The plasma being flickered rapidly, its voice tinged with what sounded like awe. "All right. Lieutenant Chen, your performance is, well, it's unprecedented. Your endurance alone is off the charts, and your adaptability to unfamiliar challenges is remarkable." Another instructor, a tall, spindly creature with multiple limbs, chimed in. "We knew humans came from a high-gravity world, but this, if these readings are correct, you might be one of the most physically capable students we've ever had." Sarah blinked, taken aback. "But I'm just average for a human in my line of work. There are plenty of people back on Earth who could outperform me." The room fell silent, the aliens exchanging meaningful looks. Finally, Drav Kun stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over Sarah. "Lieutenant Chen," he rumbled, "I believe we may have underestimated your species, if what you say is true, and you are merely average. Well, let's just say that your time here at the Academy promises to be very interesting indeed." As the initial assessment concluded, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she had inadvertently set in motion events that would have far-reaching consequences. She had come to learn, to represent humanity in this vast galactic community. But now, watching the excited and sometimes worried expressions of her alien instructors, she realized that she might be teaching them far more than she had anticipated. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, Sarah prepared herself for whatever challenges lay ahead. One thing was certain: her time at the Intergalactic Academy of Combat was going to be anything but ordinary. Orientation and initial challenges. The days following Sarah's initial assessment were a whirlwind of activity. The Academy's curriculum had been hastily adjusted to accommodate her unique physiology and capabilities, leading to a series of orientation sessions that left both Sarah and her instructors with more questions than answers. Today, we'll be covering basic xenobiology and cultural protocols, announced Professor Zix, a gelatinous being whose translucent body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The classroom was a hemispheric chamber with adaptive seating that conformed to each student's body type. Sarah found herself surrounded by a diverse array of alien life forms, each more fantastical than the last. As Zix began the lesson, holographic displays flickered to life, showing detailed anatomical diagrams of various species. Sarah's eyes widened as she realized one of them was human. "As you can see," Zix burbled, its voice transmitted directly into Sarah's mind through some form of telepathic technology. "Our newest addition to the Academy presents some unique characteristics. Note the dense musculature, the efficient respiratory system, and the remarkable endoskeleton." Sarah shifted uncomfortably as dozens of alien eyes turned to study her. A tentacled being to her left reached out curiously, its appendage hovering near her arm. Professor." Sarah raised her hand. "I'm not sure I'm comfortable being examined like this." Zix's body rippled in what might have been embarrassment. "Of course, my apologies, Lieutenant Chen. Class, please remember our discussion on personal space and consent among different species." The tentacle withdrew, and Sarah offered a small smile to her neighbor. "No harm done. I'm just as curious about all of you." As the lesson progressed, Sarah found herself fascinated by the sheer diversity of life in the galaxy. There were silicon-based life forms that thrived in extreme heat, creatures that existed primarily in gaseous states, and even beings composed of pure energy. The challenges of creating a standardized combat training program for such a varied group of students began to dawn on her. After class, Sarah made her way to the physical training arena. The vast space was divided into sections, each simulating different planetary conditions. She watched in awe as a group of crystalline beings effortlessly navigated a course of razor-sharp rock formations, their bodies splitting and reforming with fluid grace. "Impressive, isn't it?" A gravelly voice startled Sarah from her observations. She turned to see a stocky, reptilian alien with mottled green scales. "I'm Crag, combat instructor. You must be the human everyone's talking about." Sarah nodded, extending a hand before remembering the gesture might not translate. To her surprise, Crag grasped it firmly, his scaly hide rough against her skin. "We've studied your Earth customs," Crag rumbled, a toothy grin spreading across his snout. "Now let's see what you can do. The obstacle course is set for standard gravity. Think you can handle it?" Sarah eyed the course, a twisting path of moving platforms, holographic hazards, and what appeared to be actual laser grids. It looked challenging, but nothing she hadn't faced in her military training back on Earth. "I'll give it my best shot," she said, stretching her muscles. Crag's grin widened. "That's the spirit. On my mark. Go." Sarah launched herself into the course, her body responding instinctively to the changing terrain. She leaped over electrified barriers, rolled under swinging blades, and navigated the laser grid with a dancer's precision. As she progressed, she became aware of a growing crowd of spectators, their alien voices rising in a buzz of excitement. Pushing herself to the limit, Sarah cleared the final obstacle, a sheer wall that seemed to defy gravity itself. She scrabbled for purchase, her fingers finding impossibly small holds, and hauled herself over the top. Landing in a crouch on the other side, she stood, breathing heavily but exhilarated. The arena erupted in a cacophony of alien cheers, whistles, and other vocalizations she couldn't begin to interpret. Crag bounded over, his eyes wide with amazement. "By the cosmic egg," he exclaimed, "that was. I've never seen anything like it. You broke the course record on your first try." Sarah blinked, surprised. Really? But it didn't seem that difficult. I mean, challenging, sure, but not impossible. Cragg shook his head in disbelief. Lieutenant, that course was designed to push even our most physically adept species to their limits. The fact that you found it merely challenging is, well, it's unprecedented. As the news of Sarah's performance spread, she found herself the center of attention throughout the academy. Some students approached her with curiosity and friendship, eager to learn more about humans and Earth. Others kept their distance, eyeing her warily as if she were some kind of threat. In the days that followed, Sarah faced a gauntlet of tests and challenges, each designed to push her to her limits. She excelled in physical combat training, her reflexes and strength often catching her alien sparring partners off guard. In one memorable session, she managed to flip a hulking four-armed alien twice her size, using its own momentum against it. However, not all challenges played to her strengths. In a class on psychic defense, Sarah struggled to erect even the most basic mental barriers against telepathic probes. The instructor, a wispy being of pure thought, tried to reassure her. "Don't be discouraged, Lieutenant," it whispered directly into her mind. "Many species take years to develop these skills. The fact that you can perceive our communications at all is remarkable for a non-psionic race." Sarah nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. If humans were to take their place among the galactic community, they would need to find ways to compensate for these shortcomings. As weeks passed, Sarah's reputation grew, along with the expectations placed upon her. She overheard instructors debating the implications of human capabilities, speculating on how they might shift the balance of power in the galaxy. One evening, as she sat in the Academy's biodome garden, enjoying a moment of quiet beneath an alien tree with shimmering, bell-like flowers, Sarah was approached by a familiar face. Lieutenant Chen, Drav Kun, the Academy commandant, rumbled as he lowered his massive form beside her. "I hope I'm not interrupting your meditation." Sarah straightened, offering a respectful nod. "Not at all, Commandant. Just taking a moment to process, well, everything." Drav Kun's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "Indeed, your presence here has caused quite a stir. I've received inquiries from the highest levels of the Galactic Federation regarding your species." A knot of anxiety formed in Sarah's stomach. "Sir, I hope I haven't caused any diplomatic incidents. I'm just trying to do my best, to represent Earth honorably." The commandant's scales rippled in what Sarah had come to recognize as amusement. "On the contrary, Lieutenant, your performance has opened many eyes to the potential of your species. However," he paused, his tone growing serious, "it has also raised concerns in some quarters." Sarah frowned. "Concerns? About what?" "About the role humans might play in the greater galactic community," Drav Kun explained. "Your adaptability, your resilience, your sheer physical capabilities. Some fear what might happen if these traits were turned to aggression rather than cooperation." The implication hung heavy in the air. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She wasn't just a student anymore. She was an ambassador for her entire species, her actions shaping the future of human-alien relations. "What can I do?" she asked, her voice firm with resolve. Drav Kun's expression softened. "Continue as you have been, Lieutenant. Learn, adapt, and show the galaxy the best of what humanity has to offer. The path ahead may be challenging, but I believe you. And by extension, your species are more than capable of rising to meet it." As the commandant lumbered away, Sarah remained in the garden, her mind racing with the implications of their conversation. The stars above, visible through the biodome's transparent ceiling, seemed to twinkle with both promise and warning. She had come to the Academy seeking knowledge and adventure. Now she found herself at the center of a galactic debate, her every action scrutinized and analyzed. The pressure was immense, but as Sarah took a deep breath of the alien air, rich with the scent of otherworldly blossoms, she felt a surge of determination. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever tests the Academy and the galaxy might throw at her, she would face them head-on, not just for herself, but for all of humanity. As she made her way back to her quarters, Sarah's steps were purposeful. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new opportunities to showcase human potential, and she would be ready. Little did she know that the greatest tests and the most astonishing revelations were yet to come. The Gauntlet of Elements. The Academy's massive environmental simulation chamber loomed before Sarah, its featureless exterior belying the challenges that awaited within. A crowd of alien students and instructors had gathered to witness the event, their excited chatter creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and telepathic murmurs. Lieutenant Chin, Craig's gravelly voice cut through the noise. The reptilian combat instructor approached, his scales shimmering with anticipation. Today, you've faced the Gauntlet of Elements. It's a rite of passage for all advanced students, designed to test your adaptability in extreme conditions. Sarah nodded, her face set with determination. I'm ready, sir. What should I expect? Craig's lipless mouth curved into what might have been a grin. Expect the unexpected, human. The chamber will cycle through various harsh environments. Your goal is simple: survive and reach the extraction point in each scenario. As Sarah stepped towards the chamber's entrance, a willowy alien with luminous, tendril-like appendages glided forward. I am Giera, the environmental systems specialist. It communicated directly into Sarah's mind. Please, take this. It handed Sarah a small, pulsating orb. This adaptive suit will offer basic protection and life support. It can't do everything for you, but it should prevent immediate death in most environments. Most environments. Sarah raised an eyebrow, but secured the orb to her chest. Immediately, a shimmering field enveloped her body, conforming to her shape like a second skin. Giera's tendrils waved in what might have been a shrug. The gauntlet is not without risk, but we have faith in your species' legendary adaptability. With a final nod to her instructors, Sarah stepped into the chamber. The door sealed behind her with a hiss, leaving her in complete darkness. For a moment, there was only the sound of her own breathing. Then the world exploded into chaos. Scorching heat slammed into Sarah like a physical force. The darkness gave way to a blinding landscape of red sand and roiling lava flows. Twin suns blazed overhead in a sky, the color of burning copper. Holy sh! Sarah's exclamation was cut short as she instinctively dove to avoid a geyser of superheated steam erupting from a nearby fissure. Her mind raced, assessing the situation. Extreme heat planet, likely with lower gravity based on the dust particles hanging in the air. The adaptive suit was maintaining a breathable atmosphere around her, but she could feel the intense heat seeping through. Sarah spotted a shimmer in the distance, the extraction point. Between her and safety lay a field of volatile lava flows and unpredictable steam vents. Taking a deep breath, she began to move, her enhanced human reflexes allowing her to dodge eruptions and leap over smaller lava streams. Halfway across the field, disaster struck. A particularly violent eruption sent a glob of molten rock arcing towards her. Sarah twisted, narrowly avoiding a direct hit, but the lava caught the edge of her suit. Alarms blared in her ear as the protective field fluctuated. Gritting her teeth against the pain of the heat now seeping through, Sarah pressed on. She reached the extraction point just as her suit's integrity fell to critical levels. In a flash of light, the hellish landscape disappeared. Sarah found herself plunged into darkness once more, but this time accompanied by bone-chilling cold. Ice crystals immediately began forming on her suit, which was struggling to adapt to the extreme temperature swing. An Arctic hellscape materialized around her. Howling winds drove shards of ice like knives, while the ground beneath her feet creaked and groaned with hidden crevices. In the distance, blue-white auroras danced in a starlit sky, painting the glacial landscape in ethereal light. Fighting against winds that threatened to lift her off her feet, Sarah began the treacherous journey across the ice field. Her military training kicked in, helping her identify stable paths and avoid potential pitfalls. Suddenly, the ice beneath her feet gave way. Sarah plunged into frigid water, the cold so intense it felt like fire. Her suit, already taxed from the previous environment, struggled to maintain her core temperature. With powerful strokes, Sarah swam for the surface, her lungs burning for air. She burst from the water with a gasp, hauling herself onto a nearby ice floe. Hypothermia was setting in fast. Through blurred vision, Sarah spotted the shimmer of the extraction point atop a nearby glacier. Drawing on reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed, Sarah climbed. Her fingers, numb with cold, sought out tiny cracks and handholds in the ice. More than once, she nearly lost her grip, saved only by sheer determination and the slightly lower gravity of this simulated world. Reaching the top, Sarah crawled the last few meters to the extraction point. As the Arctic world faded away, she allowed herself a moment of relief. That relief was short-lived. The third environment assaulted her senses immediately. Crushing pressure threatened to drive her to her knees, while caustic gases burned her eyes and throat. Through the haze, Sarah made out a landscape of twisted metal and crumbling stone, the ruins of some ancient alien civilization. The extraction point flickered weakly in the distance, partially obscured by swirling, toxic clouds. Sarah's suit was operating at minimal capacity now, its resources nearly depleted from the previous challenges. She began to move, each step a battle against the intense gravity. The ruined cityscape was a maze of collapsed buildings and treacherous debris. More than once, Sarah had to backtrack or find creative ways around obstacles, all while fighting the exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm her. As she neared the extraction point, a massive tremor shook the ground. Buildings toppled around her, forcing Sarah to dive and roll to avoid being crushed. She found herself trapped in a small pocket of space, surrounded by fallen rubble. For a moment, despair threatened to overtake her. She was exhausted, her suit was failing, and now she was buried alive on an alien world. Then, a memory surfaced. Her first day at the academy, the looks of awe and fear from the alien instructors as they realized what humans were capable of. With a primal scream of defiance, Sarah braced herself against the rubble. Muscles straining, tendons creaking, she pushed. The debris shifted, then began to move. In a display of strength that would have been impossible in Earth gravity, Sarah lifted the rubble enough to create an opening. She crawled out, gasping and coughing in the toxic atmosphere. The extraction point was just ahead. With the last of her strength, Sarah lunged forward, her hand passing through the shimmering field. The hellish world vanished. Sarah found herself back in the neutral environment of the simulation chamber's entrance. She collapsed to her knees, gulping in clean air as her battered body trembled with exhaustion. The chamber door hissed open. A stunned silence fell over the gathered crowd of aliens. Then, slowly, a sound began to build, a chorus of alien vocalizations that Sarah's translator rendered as cheers, applause, and expressions of disbelief. Crag rushed forward, helping Sarah to her feet. "By all the stars," he rumbled, his voice filled with awe. "You did it. You actually completed the gauntlet." Sarah managed a weak smile. "Just another day at the office," she quipped before her legs gave out. As medical personnel swarmed around her, Sarah caught snippets of conversation from the amazed instructors. "Impossible. No single being has ever. The human's resilience is beyond anything we've seen. If they're all like this, the implications for the galactic balance of power." Sarah's vision began to blur as the adrenaline wore off. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was Commandant Drav Kun's face, his multiple eyes wide with what looked like a mixture of amazement and concern. In that moment, Sarah realized that her performance in the Gauntlet of Elements had done more than just pass a test. She had irrevocably changed the galaxy's perception of humanity, for better or for worse. As darkness claimed her, Sarah's last coherent thought was a hope that she had represented her species well, and a wonder at what challenges still lay ahead in this vast, complex galactic community. Mental fortitude and tactical prowess. Sarah's eyes snapped open, her heart racing. The stark white ceiling of the Academy's medical bay slowly came into focus. She tried to sit up, only to be gently restrained by a gelatinous appendage. "Easy there, Lieutenant," came the soothing telepathic voice of Dr. Xalcrin, the Academy's chief cynobiologist. The amorphous doctor's body shimmered with bioluminescent patterns of concern. "You've been through quite an ordeal." Sarah relaxed back onto the bed, memories of the gauntlet flooding back. "How long was I out?" 3 standard cycles. Dr. Xalcrin replied, "Your physiology continues to astound us. Any other species would have required extensive genetic reconstruction after such an experience. You, however, seem to have simply needed rest." Before Sarah could respond, the medical bay's door slid open with a soft hiss. Commandant Drav Kun ducked his massive frame through the entrance, his scales shimmering with an iridescent sheen that Sarah had come to recognize as a sign of excitement or agitation. "Lieutenant Chen," the commandant rumbled, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence, "it's good to see you awake. Your performance in the gauntlet was unprecedented." Sarah managed a weak smile. "Thank you, sir. I hope I didn't cause too much trouble." Dravkun's lipless mouth curved in what might have been a grin. "On the contrary, you've caused exactly the right kind of trouble. The Galactic Council is in an uproar. Half of them want to immediately fast-track humanity for full Federation membership. The other half—" He paused, his expression growing serious. "Well, let's just say they have concerns about the potential threat an entire species of Deathworlders might pose." Sarah felt a weight settle in her stomach. She had come to the Academy to learn, to represent humanity in this vast galactic community. Now, it seemed her actions might have inadvertently put her entire species in the spotlight, for better or worse. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. The commandant's scales rippled in what Sarah had come to recognize as a shrug. "Now, Lieutenant, we continue your training, but we're going to have to accelerate the program. The next phase focuses on mental fortitude and tactical decision-making. Are you up for it?" Sarah swung her legs off the bed, standing tall despite the lingering aches in her body. "Ready and willing, sir." The following weeks were a blur of intense training sessions, each designed to push the limits of Sarah's mental capabilities. She found herself in simulated command scenarios, making split-second decisions that could mean life or death for entire planetary populations. The pressure was immense, but Sarah discovered a well of inner strength she never knew she possessed. One particularly grueling exercise placed her in command of a multi-species task force, defending a colony world from an invasion of silicon-based life forms. The aliens on her team were skeptical at first, unused to taking orders from a primitive human. "With all due respect, Lieutenant," hissed Zexlor, a serpentine tactical officer, "your species has barely mastered interplanetary travel. How can you possibly understand the complexities of multidimensional warfare?" Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself. "I may not have your advanced technology, Zexlor, but humans have been studying warfare for millennia. Sometimes, a fresh perspective is exactly what's needed." As the simulation progressed, Sarah's unconventional tactics began to turn the tide. She utilized the unique abilities of each species on her team in ways they hadn't considered, creating synergies that caught the enemy off guard. By the time the exercise ended in a decisive victory, Sarah had earned the respect and admiration of her alien squadmates. "Remarkable," mused the simulation's overseer, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix. "You didn't just win, Lieutenant Chen. You fundamentally changed the way your team approached the problem. This adaptability. It's unlike anything we've seen before." But not all of Sarah's challenges were combat-oriented. The Academy also subjected her to intense psychological tests, probing the limits of human mental resilience. In one particularly harrowing session, Sarah found herself in a sensory deprivation chamber, her mind assaulted by alien consciousnesses attempting to break through her mental defenses. The experience was disorienting, terrifying. a psychic cacophony threatening to overwhelm her sense of self. Drawing on techniques she learned from the Academy's psychic instructors, Sarah constructed a mental fortress. She imagined the familiar streets of her hometown, filling them with memories and emotions that were uniquely human. The alien minds, unable to comprehend or navigate this mental landscape, eventually withdrew. As Sarah emerged from the chamber, shaken but unbowed, she found a crowd of awestruck instructors waiting for her. "Incredible," whispered Ziara, the wispy psychic trainer. "Your species lacks natural psychic abilities, yet you managed to repel a coordinated assault from 5 of our most powerful telepaths. How did you do it?" Sarah managed a weak smile. "I just thought of home." As news of Sarah's continued successes spread throughout the Academy, she found herself becoming something of a celebrity. Alien students from all corners of the galaxy sought her out, eager to learn from the human who kept defying expectations. But with her growing reputation came growing scrutiny. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, evaluated not just as a student, but as a representative of her entire species. The weight of that responsibility was often overwhelming. One evening, as Sarah sat in the Academy's arboretum, trying to find a moment of peace among the alien flora, she was approached by an unexpected visitor. "Lieutenant Chen," came a melodious voice. Sarah looked up to see Ambassador HFY, the Galactic Federation's chief diplomat. The ambassador's crystalline body refracted the arboretum's soft light, creating a dazzling display of colors. "I hope I'm not interrupting your meditation." Sarah straightened, offering a respectful nod. "Not at all, Ambassador. How can I help you?" HFY's faceted eyes studied her intently. "I've been following your progress with great interest, Lieutenant. Your performances in both physical and mental challenges have been illuminating." There was something in the ambassador's tone that put Sarah on edge. "Thank you, sir. I'm just trying to do my best, to represent Earth honorably." Indeed, HFY's crystalline form shimmered in what might have been amusement. "And that's precisely what brings me here. The Galactic Council is divided on the issue of humanity. Your potential is undeniable, but so too is the threat you could pose if that potential is misused." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Ambassador, I can assure you that Earth has no hostile intentions towards the Galactic Federation. We're here to learn, to become part of this incredible community." HFY's crystalline body chimed softly. "Your words are reassuring, Lieutenant, but words alone are not enough. The Council has decided that you, as Earth's representative, must face one final test, a challenge that will determine not just your fate, but the fate of your entire species." As the ambassador outlined the nature of this ultimate trial, Sarah felt a mix of anticipation and dread. Everything she had learned, everything she had endured, had been leading to this moment. The fate of humanity would rest on her shoulders, and as the twin moons of the alien world rose over the arboretum, casting their ethereal light across the otherworldly landscape, Sarah Chen steeled herself for the greatest challenge of her life, and quite possibly the most important test in human history. The final trial and galactic implications. The day of Sarah's final trial dawned with an air of tension that seemed to permeate every corner of the Academy. As she made her way to the Grand Arena, a massive structure capable of simulating entire war scenarios, Sarah couldn't help but notice the hushed conversations and furtive glances from both students and instructors. At the arena's entrance, she was met by a solemn-faced Commandant Drav Kun and Ambassador HFY. The ambassador's crystalline form pulsed with an intensity Sarah hadn't seen before. "Lieutenant Chen." HFY's melodious voice carried an undercurrent of gravity. "Today, you face a challenge unlike any other. The outcome will determine not just your fate, but the future of human galactic relations." Drav Kun nodded, his scales shimming with what Sarah had come to recognize as a mix of pride and concern. "You'll be pitted against the top graduates from every major species in the Federation. The scenario is a no-holds-barred conflict simulation. Your objective is not just to survive, but to lead. Sarah took a deep breath, centering herself. I understand. What are the parameters? You'll be dropped into a simulated war-torn planet, HFY explained. Resources are scarce, alliances are fragile, and victory conditions are fluid. The Council will be observing not just your combat prowess, but your decision-making, your ethical choices, and your ability to navigate complex interspecies dynamics. As Sarah absorbed this information, a thought struck her. Sir, you said I need to lead. What exactly am I leading? Dravkun's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. Ah, yes. You'll be given command of a small, mixed-species team. Refugees from the conflict who've banded together for survival. Your challenge is to not only ensure their survival, but to find a way to resolve the planet-wide conflict. Sarah's mind raced with the implications. This wasn't just a test of her abilities. It was a microcosm of humanity's potential role in the galactic community. Could one human unite diverse alien species and bring peace to a war-torn world? With a final nod to her mentors, Sarah stepped into the simulation chamber. The world shimmered around her, coalescing into a bleak, war-ravaged landscape. Ruins of alien architecture stretched as far as the eye could see, while the acrid smell of smoke and the distant sound of explosions filled the air. Sarah found herself in a makeshift camp, surrounded by a motley crew of alien refugees. There was Zix, the gelatinous xenobiologist she recognized from her classes. Crag, the reptilian combat instructor who had become something of a mentor. A crystalline being she didn't recognize. And, to her surprise, a holographic representation of a human. Likely the Council's way of adding another layer of complexity to her challenge. Lieutenant Chen, Zix burbled, its form rippling with anxiety. Thank the cosmic forces you're here. We're barely surviving, caught between three warring factions, each vying for control of the planet's last viable resources. Sarah's military training kicked in. Give me a sitrep. What are our resources, and what do we know about these factions? As her ragtag team briefed her on the situation, Sarah's mind whirred with possibilities. The conflict seemed intractable. Ancient grudges, resource scarcity, and cultural misunderstandings had created a powder keg that threatened to annihilate all life on the planet. But where others saw hopelessness, Sarah saw opportunity. All right, team, she said, her voice filled with determination. We're going to do something unexpected. Instead of choosing a side or trying to flee, we're going to become the fourth faction, the Peacemakers. Her plan was audacious. Using each team member's unique skills and knowledge of their respective cultures, they would infiltrate each warring faction. Not to fight, but to understand. To find common ground. The next few hours were a whirlwind of covert operations, tense negotiations, and more than a few close calls. Sarah's human adaptability and out-of-the-box thinking proved invaluable. Where traditional diplomatic approaches failed, she found unconventional solutions. She used Zix's scientific knowledge to propose a revolutionary resource-sharing technology, addressing the scarcity that fueled the conflict. Crag's military expertise helped her negotiate a ceasefire by exposing the mutually assured destruction all factions faced if the war continued. The crystalline being's natural affinity for energy manipulation provided a new, sustainable power source that could benefit all. Perhaps most crucially, Sarah leveraged her own status as an outsider, a human in a galaxy of aliens, to offer a fresh perspective. She helped each faction see the conflict through new eyes, challenging long-held assumptions and fostering empathy. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and near disasters. At one point, Sarah found herself in a direct confrontation with the leader of the most aggressive faction, a towering, multi-limbed being with a deep-seated hatred for the other species. Why should we listen to you, human? The leader snarled, looming over Sarah. You're not even from this galaxy. What could you possibly understand about our struggles? Sarah stood her ground, meeting the alien's gaze unflinchingly. You're right. I'm an outsider. But sometimes, It takes an outsider to see the forest for the trees. Your conflict isn't unique. Humans have fought similar wars, made the same mistakes. But we've also learned to overcome them. Let me show you how. In that moment, something shifted. The alien leader saw in Sarah not just a human, but a symbol of hope, a living proof that different species could not only coexist, but thrive together. As the simulation reached its climax, Sarah stood before a grand council of all three factions, her ragtag team by her side. With passion, logic, and an appeal to their shared desire for survival and prosperity, she laid out a plan for lasting peace. The simulation faded away, leaving Sarah back in the neutral environment of the Academy's arena. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the air was filled with a cacophony of alien cheers, whistles, and other vocalizations of approval. Ambassador Xilfar approached, his crystalline form pulsing with an intensity Sarah had never seen before. "Lieutenant Chen," he said, his voice filled with awe. "In all my cycles, I have never witnessed such a display of leadership, ingenuity, and compassion." Commandant Drav Kun joined them, his scales shimmering with unmistakable pride. "You didn't just pass the test, Sarah. You redefined it. You showed us not just the potential of humanity, but a new way forward for the entire galactic community." As the implications of her success sank in, Sarah felt a mix of exhaustion, elation, and deep responsibility. She had come to the Academy to learn, but in the process, she had become a teacher. A bridge between humanity and the vast, complex tapestry of galactic civilization. In the days that followed, news of Sarah's performance spread like wildfire across the Federation. The Galactic Council, once divided on the issue of humanity, voted unanimously to extend an invitation for Earth to join as a full member. But for Sarah, the most profound moment came during a quiet conversation with a young alien cadet. The being, a species she had never encountered before, approached her with wide, curious eyes. "Lieutenant Chen," it said, its translator struggling to convey the emotion in its voice. "Your story has inspired me. I used to fear the unknown, the different, but you've shown us that diversity isn't just to be tolerated, it's to be celebrated. That our differences can be our greatest strength." As Sarah looked out at the stars from the Academy's observation deck, she realized that her journey was far from over. She had opened a door, not just for humanity, but for a new era of galactic cooperation and understanding. The universe, vast and full of wonders, awaited, and humanity, with its unique blend of resilience, adaptability, and compassion, was ready to take its place among the stars.